This is week 19. I'm going to talk about conducting phone interviews. Last week I talked about using Google Voice to record them, so this week I'm going to talk about scheduling and preparing for the interview. So the first thing is using Google spreadsheets to organize the interview. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So this is Google Docs. This is what I use to organize my interview list, or those that I'm going to interview. I like it because I can access it through my Google Drive. It's something that I can update through either my phone, laptop, desktop, whatever thing I'm on. And it's something I frequently have been using since I've been doing a lot of interviews recently. So that flexibility has been wonderful. So I highly recommend it. It's free, so I like that part too. So anyway, so what I do is I use this, and this isn't my original one or the actual one that I use, just because that one's full of, real people's contact information, and I don't need to share that. But anyway, this is just the layout that I use. So, the left to right, I use their name or their name. I put that in there. The email address that I use for contact. I mean, you may have phone numbers. You can use that as well. I know I have that for a couple people, but email primarily because they kind of need their email address because they need to send them documents and stuff. So I'm using that as their primary contact. Then notes, and this isn't something I've been using a lot, but I've started to, because when I originally am contacted by people, they'll share something of interest. Oh, hey, I was there, and I was there during a particular event, or something that may be of interest. I did a notable charter. So I've started making those notes, and this is just because then later I can try to customize my interview questions for that interview, so I can be a little bit better prepared. Because this may be the way it is now. I mean, I have some people that it can take me almost a month to get to their interview. I'm doing 2 to 3 a week, but I'm gaining about 2 to 3 a week, at least this initial month or so. So I may forget, what was that person's contact with this or connection to this story? So I'm trying to make the notes for that. Initial reply, again, so I put down the date that I initially contacted them, or they contacted me, and I send information back and forth with them. This way I can remember how long have they been waiting. And with some people, I do realize, boy, it's been a while. I kind of reach out to them, hey, I haven't forgotten about you. You're on my list. I'll probably get you in within 2 weeks or next week, something like that. Then once they're scheduled, I put that in just as a reminder of myself, and then in hindsight, I can look back and I basically have a timestamp or a date stamp with that. So if I need to try to find the file that would be the recording of theirs, it's one more way to find it. I know that it was on, May 25th in this case, and then I can try to pull that up. Once it's done, I check the completed box. Again, this is just more for, overall I can look and see how many empty spots do I have, those that I have still yet to get to. And then finally release. This is something that you need to have signed in order to, if you want to use anything that they share as a quote in the book or anything else. So this is my reminder that I have been given the signed release from them. So in this case, I would consider, this interview done completely from the initial contact all the way to having the signed release after it was done. So then I just use this. I update this as I get new names, and then as this stuff comes in, I may add some other fields, but that would be for a later time. At least for the initial interview, this is working out great. So once I have that done, basically once I have them scheduled, then I go into preparing for, or even preparing them for the interview. So that initial contact, the first thing that I send back to them is my list of questions for the interview. And the reason being is, one, in some cases, this has been decades since they've thought about their time at the campus bus service. So by sharing that with them and they read through it, I'm hoping that it's going to trigger some of those memories. Oh, I remember this, or he's asking about this. Also, too, it's going to give them some time to prepare for those questions, more specifically, like dates and places. So he's going to ask me, when did I start there? That's something I haven't thought about. So then they can, have that answer kind of prepared, so that the interview goes a little bit more smoothly instead of asking me a question, but boy, I don't know, I got to go through all that. And that happens still, but this should minimize that. So I do send them a list of questions, and This is my list of questions here that I use. So I have my general campus bus service interview questions, which is what I'm calling the document. This is exactly what that I send them. Initially just starts out just a little bit about them, where they're from, what was it like being at Kent, and then the last questions are all specific to being a driver, or supervisor, or office person at the bus service. And again, this kind of goes back to my notes, where if there's something that's unique to their experience, then I try to prepare for that before, do some research on my end, and try to find out enough that I can ask them questions about that to maybe trigger some things that, again, I'm trying to learn from them. I don't have all of the answers, even know the whole story, so I need to come up with those questions to try to prompt them to come up with something. So I do try to do that as well when I can. So anyway, that's kind of the next step. So I've scheduled, I've sent them the interview questions, and then I'll schedule the interview. And like I said, talking about the Google Voice last week, they have to call me because I can only record incoming calls. And then I record the call and go through the whole question list here, or anything new that I had to add to it. And then the last thing would be getting the signed release. So again, this is something else that I've created. There are templates out there. This is kind of a mix of templates that I found, and then a release that I used for the previous book. And part of it is because you don't have a name of the book, so when you go to a publisher, they're going to want to have these signed releases, but the book name may change. So I just, in this case, called the Kent State Campus Bus Service History Book Project. I don't know what the name is, but that's what it is, and that's more than enough to cover this. But again, so it's the date of the interview, the place of the interview, maybe via phone, whatever they want to put on that, their name, their address, their phone number, their email, and then ask them a couple questions about how I can use the information from this, and they're welcome to check those off. That I can be used for research, that they can be quoted. I may be used but not to include their name. They may want to be anonymous on that. Or obviously they can check the box that they want their name used. And then if they do get used or quoted, how do they want their name to be listed? And then finally their signature. So when I'm done, and I conclude the interview with saying, as soon as I'm done, I'm going to send you an email that's going to have this release form, and I need you to sign it and send it back. So they can, print it out, sign it, scan it, send it back. If they can't do that, I make arrangements to send them a self-addressed stamp envelope with this so they can sign it and then send it back to me. And this is also twofold. I actually have two releases for this project. One is because it's serving my needs, and the other is part of this project is to get these interviews into the Kent State Special Collections archives for their future, storage. So I have to have a release that's for them specifically, and that release, I think somewhere I have that release here. And here's the release for the Special Collections at Kent State. And so this was coordinated with them. They sent me a release that they had used for other oral history projects, and I just took it and modified it to kind of reflect my project, unique project. So that was something back and forth that they sent me theirs, and then I sent my version back. They had some, suggestions that would meet their legal needs on their end, blah, 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 back and forth. So that's something, if you feel that you know the destination of these interviews, to work with them to get this release signed, or at least not signed, that it's created to their standards, so that you don't have that problem at the end where you go to them and go, boy, we really need to have certain language in there to protect us long term. So then you have to track down the people you interviewed to have them sign something else. So do that legwork in advance, and then you're protected. So those are the two releases. I have them sign when they're done. Everybody's been wonderful about it and is thrilled to be a part of that. So it's kind of a non-event. I do have quite a few outstanding still, but again, I'm not turning these into the Kent State Special Collections anytime soon. So I'll just follow up with them. Again, since I have that checkbox on my form. If that checkbox is empty, then I know that I need to follow up with them, and I may do that, give them another month, and then say, all right, hey, have you gotten those yet? If you need me, I can mail them to you if that's easier, whatever, just so they're all done, and then I can make a deposit of all of those files. So once all that is signed, it's digitized, and then store them on your cloud. So you have a folder that's all of these things along. I just kind of store them almost along with the actual recording of the interview. So they're kind of in the same folder. But anyway, that's really how I kind of run the interviews, or at least prepare for and then kind of handle them afterwards. So get them scheduled, get it organized so you don't lose track of people. Then take a little bit of time, send them the interview questions before, and maybe modify those interview questions if you learn a little bit something about them. And then once it's done, immediately send them the releases, and then keep track of that to make sure that you have them so that when you're ready to use it or send them back, or send it to the destination if you have another organization you're working with, that they're already taken care of. So that's really it for week 19. It's Memorial Day weekend. Didn't really do much this last week. I did some, not that much. But anyway, going into week 20, which is actually then the conclusion of month 5, which is pretty crazy. So that's it for week 19, and on to week 20. Bye now.